What was supposed to be the best wedding night? She found out who he really was. There are times in life when we believe we are entering a fairy tale, but reality insists on showing that not everything is what it seems. That's exactly what happened to Emily on the night that was supposed to be the happiest of her life. If you like intense stories full of mystery, enjoy this video and subscribe to follow every detail. Emily Carter has always believed in love. She grew up in a small town in the Georgia countryside, where her mother worked as an English teacher and her father was a mechanic. The simple life taught her solid values: respect, kindness, and, above all, trust. From an early age, Emily dreamed of finding someone who shared these principles, someone with whom she could build a stable life, based on true love. It was in Atlanta that her story with Michael Collins began. She had moved there at the age of 25, after getting a job as a marketing assistant at a medium-sized agency. Michael, in turn, was a successful businessman in the real estate business, owner of an impeccable posture and a confidence that caught the attention of everyone around. They met at a party organized by mutual friends. Emily, who didn't usually stand out in such environments, was surprised when Michael approached her with a confident smile and a steady gaze. He seemed to have already decided that he wanted to get to know her better. The conversation flowed naturally, and for the first time, Emily felt that someone was seeing her beyond the surface. The following weeks were marked by encounters that seemed to be taken from a novel: dinners in high-end restaurants, unexpected walks around the city, and even small surprises that Michael made a point of preparing. He had a habit of sending flowers to her office for no apparent reason, just to remind her that he was thinking of her. However, there was something about Michael that Emily still didn't fully understand. He was reserved when it came to his personal life. He talked about business with ease, but avoided mentioning family, childhood friends, or past details. Emily, passionate and involved, chose not to press. I believed that, in time, it would open up. After 2 years of relationship, the marriage proposal came. It was at a dinner party by Lake Lanier, lit by hundreds of small lights that reflected off the calm water. Michael knelt before her, with a simple but elegant ring, and asked the question that Emily had been waiting to hear. Without hesitation, she said yes. The following months were a rush of preparations. Emily took care of every detail, but Michael made sure to delegate most of it to a hired advisor. He said he wanted her to enjoy the experience without stress, but Emily noticed that he always kept his distance from the emotional decisions of the ceremony. The big day has arrived. The ceremony was held in a traditional Atlanta church, decorated with white roses and candles that softly illuminated the altar. Emily looked stunning in a classic dress, and Michael, in a tailored suit, looked even more imposing. His gaze, fixed on her during the vows, conveyed an intensity that made Emily believe, more than ever, that she was facing the right man. The reception was grandiose, with guests coming from different parts of the country. Music, emotional speeches, and endless toasts marked the night. Emily smiled nonstop, believing that this was the beginning of a perfect life. But it was on their wedding night, already in the luxurious hotel where they would spend their first night as husband and wife, that something began to change. Emily entered the room decorated with rose petals, chilled champagne, and a stunning view of the illuminated city. Michael seemed too calm, almost distant, while she, anxiously, sought that moment of intimacy that would mark the beginning of their life together. He sat in the armchair next to the window, loosened his tie, and watched her in silence. The charming smile he always showed in public was gone. Emily, still in her wedding dress, noticed a rigidity in his gaze that she had never seen before. "Is everything okay?" she asked, trying to break the silence that was becoming uncomfortable. Michael took a few seconds to respond. Finally, he said in a cold tone, "Emily, there are things you need to know about me." She felt her heart race. I didn't expect to hear something like this that night. He tried to smile, to minimize the tension. "We can talk about it later. Today is our night," she said, taking a few steps towards him. But Michael remained motionless, his gaze fixed on her, as if he were about to reveal something that would change everything. Emily stood before him, confused. The fairy tale feeling began to slowly crumble, replaced by a restlessness she couldn't explain. That night, Emily would discover that the man she had just married was not exactly who she said he was. Michael sat in the armchair, staring at Emily as if he were evaluating her every reaction. The silence in the room, broken only by the distant sound of city traffic below, seemed to compress the air. Emily, still in her wedding dress, felt her skin crawl. That night should have been marked by laughter, whispered promises, and the intimacy of a couple who had just taken the most important step of their lives. But there was something in his eyes that didn't match any of that. "What do you mean by things I need to know?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Michael rested his elbows on his knees, leaned forward, and ran his hand through his hair tightly. He took a deep breath, as if he were about to release a weight he had been carrying for years. "Emily," he began, but interrupted himself, closing his eyes for a few seconds. "I'm not exactly the man you think I am." Her heart raced. Emily felt her legs tremble and, without realizing it, clasped her hands against the fabric of her dress. "You're scaring me," she said, almost in a whisper. Michael got up slowly, walked to the sideboard where the bottle of champagne was, and poured himself a glass. He didn't offer her. He didn't make the slightest gesture of courtesy, which already sounded strange for someone who had always been so attentive. "I don't want you to see me as a liar," he said, staring at the golden liquid before taking a sip. "But the truth is that I hid a lot of things from you." Emily swallowed. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but he was afraid to hear the answers. "You're married to me now, Michael. There should be no room for secrets between us. What exactly are you hiding?" He turned to face her, with the cup still in his hand. His face was serious, his features were hard, as if he had taken off a mask he had been wearing for a long time. "My life isn't as clean as I let you believe." Those words hit Emily like a punch. For the past 2 years, Michael had shown himself to be the perfect man. Caring, financially stable, someone any woman would trust. The idea that it could all be just a facade left her paralyzed. "What are you talking about?" she insisted, trying to find some logical explanation. Michael walked around the room, from one side to the other, as if looking for the courage to continue. "I don't want you to find out about it from others, or to hear it distorted by hearsay," he said. "I'd rather it come from me." Emily took a deep breath, her eyes already teary. "Then speak. Now." He stood before her, so close that Emily could smell the drink on her breath. "Emily, I've built my professional life in a way that it wasn't always within the rules." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "My business," he replied, looking away. "They're not as legitimate as you might think." Emily felt the ground disappear under her feet. His mind began to spin in circles. "What do you mean, not so legitimate?" He owned a real estate company, appeared in business magazines, gave interviews about investments. "Are you saying that your company is illegal?" he asked, his voice cracking. Michael did not immediately respond. He took another sip of champagne before turning to the window, contemplating the illuminated city. "I wouldn't say illegal," he finally said in a calculated tone. "But there are practices, say, questionable." Emily put her hand to her mouth. "I couldn't believe what I heard. Are you kidding me? Is this some kind of test?" He turned suddenly, staring at her coldly. "No, Emily. This is the reality. You deserve to know who you married." Her heart was beating wildly. He remembered every detail of the last 2 years, the expensive gifts, the upscale restaurants, the unexpected trips. She had always wondered how he managed to be so available and, at the same time, maintain a business empire. Now, every detail began to take on another meaning. "So, you fooled me from the start," she said, tears streaming down her face. Michael approached, but not with the tenderness she expected. There was an almost menacing seriousness to his posture. "I didn't fool you about how I feel about you. This is real. But about how I conquered everything you saw? Yes, I hid it." Emily took a few steps back, moving away from him. "And what exactly are you trying to tell me? That you are involved in shady dealings? That the money that paid for this marriage is not clean?" He did not answer. He just watched her, with an expression that mixed guilt and determination. The silence was more painful than any words. Emily felt her heart tighten. It wasn't just about money or business. It was about trust. The man she had chosen to share life with was revealing that he had built a castle on quicksand. She slumped on the edge of the bed, unable to bear the weight of her own disappointment. "I don't believe it," he murmured. "Why only now? Why today?" Michael approached slowly, kneeling before her. "Because today you are my wife. I needed you to know the truth." Emily lifted her face, her eyes full of pain. "And do you think that's fair? To take away the illusion of me precisely on the night that should be the happiest of my life?" He sighed, lowering his head. "There is no right time for this. But I couldn't bear to keep living with this lie." Emily didn't know what to think. Inside her, love and anger mixed unbearably. Part of her wanted to believe that she could still trust him, that there was a plausible justification for all of this. But another part shouted that nothing would ever be the same again. She stood up, walking to the window. The city shone outside, indifferent to the chaos that settled inside the room. In that instant, Emily had the feeling that her life had changed forever. The fairy tale had ended before it had even begun. Emily stood by the window, watching the lights of Atlanta flicker as if the whole city were celebrating. But inside her, the silence was deafening. With each second, she felt that the weight of the wedding dress became more suffocating, as if that fabric was a silk trap. Behind her, Michael remained silent. His silence was calculated, dense, almost oppressive. Emily closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. "So that's it," she mumbled, without turning around. "You brought me here, made me believe everything, and then threw the truth in my face on our wedding night." Michael stood up slowly, walking up to her. "I had to be honest, Emily. I couldn't bear to keep hiding." She spun suddenly, staring at him with tears in her eyes. "Honest? Do you call it honesty? 2 years of lies, of secrets. And only now do you decide to open your mouth?" He swallowed, his eyes hard but his voice surprisingly calm. "I love you. That was never a lie." Emily shook her head, feeling her heart tighten even more. "To love is not to hide. To love is to trust. And you never trusted me." Michael approached, but she took 2 steps back, keeping her distance. "Tell me something, Michael. If you have so much courage to confess, then be direct with me. How far does your lie go?" He hesitated. He looked at the ground, ran his hand over his face, as if seeking strength. "You wouldn't understand." Emily felt an anger rise up inside. "Don't treat me like a child. I'm your wife now. I have the right to know who I married." Michael looked up, and this time there was something dark about them. "Everything you've seen, Emily. The company, the comfortable life, the investments. None of this would have existed if I had followed the rules like everyone else." She felt her stomach turn. "You're saying that?" "Stole." He did not answer. He walked to the table, poured more champagne, and drank the glass at once. Emily realized in that gesture that the truth was much bigger than he let slip. A heavy silence settled again, until she finally said, "If you don't tell me now, I'll find out on my own." Her words echoed through the room. Michael raised his head slowly, analyzing it with a cold gaze, as if he wasn't used to being challenged. "Finding out on your own can be dangerous." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you threatening me?" he asked, in an incredulous tone. He sighed, looking away. "No, Emily. I'm trying to protect you." These words confused her even more. Protect from what? If he said he loved her, why did he seem so distant, so hardened? She took the veil off her head and threw it on the bed. The feeling of suffocation increased. She needed air. She needed to get away from that room, from that man who, until a few hours ago, seemed to be the perfect love of her life. "I need to get out of here," he said, walking toward the door. But Michael moved quickly and stood in front of her, blocking the passage. "No, not now." Emily stared at him, surprised by his firmness. "Why not?" He took a deep breath, his jaw locked. "Because outside, you can hear things, which I'm not ready to explain yet." Emily felt her heart beat wildly. "What kind of things?" he asked, his voice trembling. Michael did not answer. He just stood there, staring at her, as if silence was safer than any confession. Emily realized then that there was much more behind that story. He wasn't just involved in questionable dealings. There was something bigger, something he feared would come to light. She retreated, unable to hide her fear. Michael, who are you really? He remained motionless, staring at her, as if that was the question he least wanted to answer. The silence lasted until, finally, he said, I am a man who made wrong choices to get where he is. And now, you are part of it. Emily felt a knot in her chest. It wasn't just the marriage that was at stake, it was her own life. For the first time, she had the feeling that she had married a stranger. She turned around, walking back to the bed, trying to control her breathing. She sat down, her gaze lost, as he stood, watching her like someone watching a secret about to escape. The silence between them said more than any words. And Emily knew, in her heart of hearts, that this night was just beginning. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, resting her elbows on her knees and burying her face in her hands. The room, once prepared for a night of celebration, now looked like a nightmare scenario. The rose petals on the ground no longer had any meaning. The chilled champagne seemed like an ironic detail amid the weight that hung in the air. Michael was still standing, motionless, watching her as if studying every reaction. Emily, he said, in a lower tone this time, you must believe me when I say that everything I have done because I saw no other way out. She raised her face slowly, her eyes red and teary. Don't ask me to believe something you don't even have the courage to explain. Her words cut through the air like a blade. Michael looked away, walking to the window. He stood there, motionless, with his back to her, as if seeking strength in the illuminated city. Emily took a deep breath. His mind began to go over the last 2 years, trying to find something that could make sense of that revelation. And, little by little, details began to come back. She remembered the day Michael took her, by surprise, to New York, without giving much explanation. He had said he wanted a weekend out of the routine. But throughout the trip, he seemed restless, as if he was waiting for an important call. There was also that night when he received an unexpected visitor at the apartment. A man Emily had never seen before, with a gruff appearance and a heavy expression. Michael asked her to go to the bedroom and close the door. When he returned, he was visibly altered, but he limited himself to saying that it was a business matter. At the time, Emily decided not to insist. He thought it would be exaggerated distrust on her part. After all, Michael always treated her with affection, always made a point of showing how much he loved her. But now, looking back, he realized that there was a shadow in every detail that he ignored. How could I not notice? She muttered to herself. Michael turned around suddenly. Realize what? Emily stood, her body trembling. That everything about you was. Scenario. The flowers at work, the dinners, the trips. All this was just a facade, wasn't it? He walked up to her, fast, his eyes steady. Don't say that. Every gesture I made was real. I wanted to make you happy, Emily. That was never a lie. She took a step back. Then why do I feel married to a stranger? Michael stopped, staring at her in silence. The weight of her question seemed greater than any accusation. Emily took a deep breath, trying to control her tears. I need to understand, he said in a low voice. Who are you really? What did you do? Michael ran his hand through his hair, nervous. He walked from one side of the room to the other, like a caged lion. I can't tell you everything right now. Emily felt her heart race. Then tell me at least one thing. His voice came out firmly, almost like an ultimatum. Is any part of your life really clean? Michael stopped. His silence was answer enough. Emily put her hand to her chest, as if trying to hold the heart that seemed about to explode. My God, he murmured. I married a man I don't know. Michael took a step forward, but her gaze made him stop. Don't touch me, Emily said firmly. Not until I know who you really are. He stood there, standing there, taking a deep breath, as if fighting against his own conscience. Emily, in turn, felt her mind spin. Every memory now seemed like a clue. The time he said he needed to travel for work, but came back with a tired and evasive expression. The insistence on never talking about the family. Excessive care in keeping certain folders locked in the home office. Everything was in front of her all the time. But she chose to see only the perfect man, because she wanted to believe in a fairy tale. Tears flowed silently. Michael finally broke his silence. I know you hate me now, but one day you will understand. Emily looked up, surprised by his tranquility. Understand what? That you deceived me? That you've built a whole life on lies? He did not answer. He just walked away, sitting down in the armchair again. Silence once again dominated the room. But this time, it wasn't just silence. It was the harbinger of something greater, something Emily could not yet comprehend. She knew only one thing. That night would not end with easy answers. And deep down, she felt that the truth. Heart raced in waves of anger and fear. She walked over to the dressing table, slowly took off the diamond earrings she had worn to the ceremony, and left them on the mirrored surface. The simple gesture felt like a kind of rupture, as if she were stripping herself, not only of her jewelry, but also of the image of the perfect wife she had imagined for herself. I can't stay in this room, she said, without looking at him. The air here is too heavy. Michael looked up, tired but steady. Emily, don't do anything thoughtless. She spun suddenly, staring at him. Thoughtless? What's thoughtless, Michael? Walk out the door and seek answers to what you hid from me? The thoughtless thing was for you to take me to the altar full of secrets. He was silent for a few seconds, then stood up, walking towards her. You don't understand the risk of looking for answers alone. Emily narrowed her eyes. So is there a risk? Michael closed his lips, realizing that he had said more than he would have liked. Emily crossed her arms, trying to control the anger that burned inside. You're not going to lock me in this room, Michael. I have a right to know. He looked at her intensely, but didn't insist. He just sat down again, resting his elbows on his knees and running his hand over his face. His silence only increased her determination. Emily knew she couldn't sleep. She also knew that there was no point in waiting for him to open up completely. If she wanted to understand who she had married, she would have to start observing on her own. She approached the bed, opened the small white bag she had left on the nightstand, and took out her cell phone. For a moment, she thought about calling her mother, but gave up. What would you say? Who, on the night of the wedding, discovered that her husband was someone she did not know? No, I wasn't ready for it yet. Instead, she opened the Contacts app and searched for the number of Michael's lawyer, Mr. Richard Bailey. She remembered seeing her name on some papers during the wedding preparations. A discreet man, with controlled speech. Michael always said that he took care of the bureaucratic details. Emily hesitated. If he did, he might arouse suspicion. But an idea began to form in his mind. Maybe there was another way to find out. She put her phone back in her purse and, without Michael noticing, discreetly grabbed his jacket from the chair. He rummaged through his pockets, looking for any clues. He found only a few folded bills and a crumpled business card. The card was from a company called Collins and Partners Investments. Emily knew the name, but there was something strange. Michael always talked about Collins Real Estate Holdings, the company he claimed to have founded. He had never mentioned that other one. She kept the card in her dress, hiding it. When she looked up, she saw that Michael was watching her in silence. He didn't say anything, but there was something in his eyes that made it clear that he noticed her every move. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. I'll find out, Michael. You can't stop me. He did not answer. She just stood there, as if she knew that, no matter how hard she tried to stop it, her curiosity had already crossed any barrier. The dawn went on in silence, but Emily didn't close her eyes. She lay motionless, with the card hidden under her pillow, mentally repeating every detail of the night. The next morning, while Michael slept soundly, she got up slowly. Her wedding dress was thrown over the chair, crumpled, and she wore a simple outfit she had carried in her suitcase. He left the room in silence, his heart racing, and went down to the hotel lobby. The business card burned in his hand. He ordered a taxi and, without looking back, gave the address printed on the card. As the car cut through the still uncrowded streets of Atlanta, Emily felt the mixture of fear and determination grow inside her. She knew that she might not be prepared for what she was going to discover, but he also knew that there was no turning back. That morning, Emily would begin to meet the man she had married. And deep down, he feared that the truth would be more painful than any lie. The cab made its way through the streets of Atlanta slowly, while the still shy sun illuminated the city's tall buildings. Emily was leaning against the back seat, her fingers squeezing the business card until it was almost completely crumpled. His thoughts were scrambled: fear, anger, doubt. She looked once again at the printed name, Collins and Partners Investments. He had never heard Michael talk about that company. Never. And it corroded her inside. When the car stopped in front of the indicated address, Emily felt her heart beat faster. The building was discreet, without the grandeur she expected from an investment company. A building with a gray facade, 3 floors, with few signs identifying different offices. He paid the driver and got off. She stood still for a few seconds, taking a deep breath. I felt like I was crossing an invisible line, but I couldn't turn back. He entered the building and climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, where a small gold plaque bore the name, Collins and Partners Investments. The glass door was closed, but not locked. He pushed it carefully and entered. The environment was too sober for a company that carried the name Investments. Organized desks, piles of folders, computers turned off. It was early, perhaps there were no employees on site yet. Emily walked slowly, taking in the details. At the reception, on the counter, there was a desk calendar and, next to it, a pile of mail. Curious, she pulled out one of the letters and quickly read the sender. Georgia State Department of Financial Enforcement. Her stomach turned. He put the letter back and kept walking until he noticed a door ajar at the end of the corridor. He pushed her slowly and entered. The office felt personal, decorated with discreet paintings and a bookshelf full of folders. On the table, several sheets were scattered, as if someone had left in a hurry. Emily approached and began to flip through the documents. They were financial reports. Some showed impressive numbers, but others were clearly made up. There were transfers to accounts abroad, amounts incompatible with real estate deals. One name repeated itself on several pages: Richard Bailey, the lawyer. Emily felt a lump in her throat. Everything seemed interconnected. Michael had not only concealed the existence of that company, but had also used it to move suspicious sums of money. "Can I help?" The voice behind her made Emily freeze. She turned quickly and saw a woman standing in the doorway. He must have been just over 50, hair tied in a firm bun and a suspicious look. I was looking for Mr. Michael Collins," Emily improvised, trying to keep her cool. I'm his wife." The woman arched her eyebrows in surprise. "Wife?" Emily nodded, holding her wedding ring bare. The woman's expression softened, but it didn't exactly become welcoming. "So you're Emily." Her heart raced. Do you know who I am?" The woman crossed her arms. "Of course I do. Michael talked about you a few times." Emily approached slowly. "Who are you?" "My name is Linda. I have been working here for more than 15 years. I take care of some internal movements." The way she said internal movements made Emily feel the weight of those words. "Linda, I need to understand," Emily said, trying to control her voice. "What exactly is Collins and Partners?" Linda stared at her for a few seconds, in silence. He seemed to evaluate whether he could trust her. "I don't know how honest Michael was with you," she began. "But this company is not what it seems to be." Emily felt her legs tremble. "So it's true. Is he involved in illegal things?" Linda sighed, looking away. "I can't go into details. I can only say that Michael carries a heavy burden, and that, in one way or another, you are now part of it." Emily put her hand to her mouth, trying to contain her anguish. "Why? Why didn't he ever tell me?" Linda shrugged. "Maybe to protect you. Or maybe because he knew that if he did, you would never have said yes at the altar." Emily took a step back, feeling the tears threatening to fall. Before he could answer, the office door suddenly opened. Michael was standing there, looking at the two with a hard expression. "Emily," he said, in a low, almost dangerous tone. "What are you doing here?" The silence that followed seemed to freeze the air inside the room. Emily realized, at that moment, that she had crossed a border of no return, and that the truth was getting closer and closer, ready to explode at any moment. Michael closed the door behind him, his gaze fixed on Emily. The silence seemed stifling, too heavy to break. "Answer, Emily," he said, his voice cold. "What are you doing here?" She felt her body tremble, but gathered courage. I was trying to understand who the man I married is, she snapped. Because it's clearly not the same Michael who sits with me at the table every night. Michael stared at her for a few seconds, then ran his hand over her face as if fighting something. Linda, quiet in the corner, seemed to expect a decision. Emily, you shouldn't be here, he muttered. There are things I never wanted you to know. Then tell me now, she shouted, her voice breaking. I have a right to know. Michael approached slowly, stopping a few steps from her. Do you really want the truth? He asked, looking her in the eyes. Be careful, because after listening, there is no turning back. Emily swallowed, but held firm. Michael took a deep breath, walked over to the table, and picked up one of the open folders. He threw it in front of her. Emily looked at the papers, bank statements, international transfer reports, names of people she had never heard. Collins and Partners, he said bitterly. It's not just an investment company. It's a facade. Emily felt her heart race. Michael turned to the window, as if talking to himself. I launder money. Large amounts. Money coming from illegal contracts, fraud, tax evasion. The words fell on Emily like stones. She staggered one step back. No, that can't be true. Michael looked at her, and in his eyes there was a mixture of pain and resignation. That's how I built everything you saw. The houses, the cars, the parties. None of this came from successful real estate deals. Emily felt her breath fail. Is everything I've lived with you a lie? Michael came over, trying to hold her hand. Our love is not a lie. But the life I created for us is tainted. I did this before I met you. And then, when I was already too imprisoned, I couldn't get out. She pulled her hand, her face flooded with tears. Why didn't you ever tell me? Why did you drag me into this hell? Michael hesitated, but replied, because you were the only pure thing I've had in the last few years. I didn't want to tarnish that. Emily backed off, but before she could speak, Linda interjected. He's only saying half of it, Emily. Michael turned to her, furious. Beautiful, no? But it was too late. Linda took a step forward and stared at Emily seriously. The money he moves is not just from fraud or evasion. There are very dangerous people behind it. Michael is stuck with them. And now, marrying him, you are too. Emily put her hand to her mouth, feeling the ground disappear beneath her feet. Michael ran his hands through his hair, desperate. I tried to keep you out of it, Emily. But when we signed that marriage contract, his voice cracked. They have come to see you as collateral. Warranty? Emily asked, her voice barely audible. Michael moved closer, staring at her. If I don't comply, if I try to leave, they go after you. A dead silence filled the room. Emily, paralyzed, realized that she wasn't just married to a man who had secrets. She was married to a man who belonged to a criminal world, where her own life was now a bargaining chip. The feeling of betrayal, fear, and love mixed within her, forming a whirlwind impossible to control. And in that moment, she understood that it wasn't just about finding out the truth. It was about surviving it. Emily remained motionless, staring at Michael as if he were a stranger. Her chest rose and fell fast, and with every word that echoed in her mind, money laundering, dangerous people, assurance, the world seemed to spin faster. Michael tried to get closer, but she raised her hand, pulling back. Don't come near me. Emily, please. He begged, his voice breaking. I never wanted you to be involved. Everything I did was to protect her. She laughed, a nervous, bitter laugh. You tied me to a life of lies, and now you tell me it's for my good? That's no protection, Michael. This is imprisonment. Linda remained silent, watching the two of them, until she finally spoke. Emily, he's not lying about the risks. I know the men who control this scheme. They are cold. If you step out of line, they don't think twice. Emily turned to Linda, trying to find some support. Do I stay silent, pretend to accept, and wait for the worst to happen? Linda hesitated, glancing at Michael before answering. Survival means playing their game until you find a loophole. Michael closed his eyes, as if those words caused him pain. I never wanted you to know this side of my world. But now that you know, you need to trust me. I'll find a way out of this. Emily felt a tightness in her chest. Part of her wanted to believe. She wanted to cling to the man who had shown her tenderness, who had made her laugh at dinner parties, who looked at her as if she were everything. But another part screamed that this man had never existed, that everything had been built on a lie. "Trust you," she said, with tears in her eyes. "How can you trust someone who lied from day one?" Michael tried to touch her hand, but she pulled it again. "If I told you before, you would have left me. And maybe it was the right one." She exploded. Better that than being imprisoned now, afraid of being used as a shield. The silence that followed was suffocating. Emily took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Then, suddenly, he made a decision. He needed space. He needed to think. "I'm going to get out of here," she said, determined. "I need air." Michael immediately stood up. "No, you can't. It's dangerous. Dangerous to stay or leave, isn't it?" She countered, staring at him. "So I choose the one that gives me at least a little control." She turned and walked to the door. Michael, desperate, ran to catch up with her, but stopped before holding her. He knew that if he stopped her, he would lose her trust for good. Emily left the room, feeling her heart race. Each step felt heavy, as if walking on quicksand. That night, she did not return to the couple's bedroom. He found refuge in the guest room, locked the door, and cried until he had no strength left. In the morning, she woke up with a cloudy mind, but resolute. She could not simply accept the fate that Michael had imposed. She needed to find a way out on her own. As she was drinking coffee alone, she heard the sound of the door opening. She was beautiful. The woman watched her in silence for a few seconds, then sat down at the table. "You won't be able to face this alone, Emily," he said in a low tone. "Then help me," Emily replied without hesitation. "If you really know what's going on, tell me how I can get out of this without them noticing." Linda sighed, looking at the cup in her hands. "There is no easy way out. But there are people who would like to overturn this scheme. People who are not inside the circle, but who follow closely." Emily stared at her, intrigued. "Who?" Linda lowered her voice. "Independent researchers. People who are not afraid to expose big names." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "And you're saying, should I look for them?" Linda looked at her firmly. "I'm saying that if you really want to get out of this, you need to decide which side you're going to be on. Or close your eyes and continue living this lie by his side, or risk everything to unmask what is behind." Emily was silent. Deep down, she knew that that choice would define not only the future of the marriage, but the course of her own life. And for the first time since the revelation, she realized something. She wasn't just a victim. He had power. He could turn that into his fight. But was it prepared to face the price? Emily spent the next few days as a prisoner within herself. She slept little, with fragmented dreams that made her wake up with a start. When she was next to Michael, she felt her heart beat faster, but she didn't know if it was out of love or fear. The silence between them had become stifling. Michael avoided bringing it up, trying to act as if everything was still normal. Breakfast served, phone meetings, gestures of affection restrained. But Emily saw beyond. I saw the weight in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the exaggerated care not to leave her alone for too long. She knew she was being watched. One night, when Michael finally fell asleep, Emily discreetly took out her cell phone and opened the drawer where she hid small notes. There, he had scribbled names and clues that Linda had let slip in conversations. Company names, streets, repeated surnames. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next morning, he found Linda in the kitchen. "I need a contact," Emily said bluntly. Linda looked at her, assessing the firmness in her voice. "Are you sure what you're asking? This can put your life at risk, and mine too." "I can't live with that lie," Emily replied. "And if they already see me as collateral, then I'm already at risk anyway. I prefer to fight." Linda took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll think of someone I can trust. But don't do anything without telling me." Emily agreed, but inside she already knew she wouldn't expect long. 2 days later, in a rare moment when she was able to go out alone to buy flowers, Emily walked into a small neighborhood bookstore, discreetly indicated by Linda. Behind the counter, a middle-aged man with a gray beard watched her in silence. "Can I help?" he asked casually. Emily replied as Linda had taught. "I'm looking for something that you can't easily find. an author that everyone says is hidden. The man stared at her for a moment, then motioned for her to follow him to the back of the store. Behind a disguised door was a small room with a desk, a tape recorder turned off, and stacks of documents. "And you must be the millionaire's wife." Emily shuddered. I don't want to be recognized for that. I'm here because I need help." Kareem smiled, understanding. "Then you've come to the right place. For years I have been trying to gather evidence of what goes on behind your husband's companies. But I've never been able to get as close as I do now." Emily stared at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You're the key," he explained. "You have access. It can give us what we need to expose everything." Emily felt her stomach turn. What if they find out? They already distrust everyone. "The trick is to act before they suspect you," Kareem replied calmly. "But I'm not going to lie. If you do, your life will change forever. There will be no turning back." Emily took a deep breath, her hands shaking. Part of her wanted to get away from there, go back to the luxurious house, into Michael's arms, and pretend nothing. Humans that seem ordinary, but hide absurd figures. "You will have access to all of this. You just need to be attentive." Emily took the list and put it in her bag, feeling the weight of a new life begin. Before leaving, Kareem added, "Remember, Emily, truth is not just a weapon. It is also a sentence. You need to be ready for whatever comes." She nodded, her heart racing. That night, as she lay next to Michael, Emily watched him in silence. He slept peacefully, his face serene, as if the world wasn't collapsing around him. Emily felt tears flow. She still loved him. I still wanted to believe him. But, for the first time, he had chosen a path of no return. She was no longer just the obedient wife. Now, it was the witness who could change everything. And deep down, he knew that when Michael found out about his decision, there would be no forgiveness. The days that followed were the longest of Emily's life. Every step inside the mansion seemed to echo like a secret about to be discovered. As he poured tea to Michael, he smiled. As she walked with him through the gardens, she held his hand. But inside the bag, hidden in the lining, was Kareem's list, filled in piecemeal with details she observed. Suspicious meetings, whispered names, transactions that seemed innocent. Michael, despite trying to disguise it, was also different. The touches of affection had become longer, almost like a silent apology. There were nights when he just watched her sleep, as if he feared that when he woke up, she would no longer be there. Emily could see his anguish, but he couldn't go back. In the third week, he met Kareem again, in the same bookstore. He handed him an envelope with the notes. "That's all I've achieved so far," she said, almost in a whisper. Kareem opened it, read it quickly, and looked up in surprise. "That name, this contract. Emily, this directly links Michael to an international money laundering network. With this, we can overthrow everyone." Emily swallowed. "Does he know?" "Not yet, but you'll know soon," replied Kareem. "I need you to be ready. When this bomb explodes, you won't just be a wife. It will be a key witness." Emily felt the weight of the sentence. And what would that make Michael? A criminal, a hunted man, maybe even arrested. And what would you make of it? That night, the silence between them was so heavy that it seemed to suffocate. Michael broke first. "You've been distant. Is there anything you didn't tell me?" Emily stared at him, her hands trembling. For a second, he almost confessed. He almost asked him to drop everything and start over far away. But he knew there was no turning back. "I'm just tired," she replied. "That weight, this life. Sometimes it seems too much." Michael held her hand tightly. "I've done things I'm not proud of. I did it because I thought it was the only way to keep everything standing. But for you, I would drop everything." Emily felt her heart break. If he had said that before, maybe there was still time. Now it was too late. 2 days later, the house was invaded. Armed agents, firm voices shouted orders. Emily was pulled to the side, while Michael, paralyzed in his chair, just looked up, not resisting. The noise, the chaos, the weight of truth exploding around. She knew it was the end. Michael looked at her one last time, with a mixture of pain and tenderness. There was no hatred in his eyes, only the acceptance that she had chosen another path. "It has always been my only truth," he said, before being taken. The words pierced her like blades. Emily fell to her knees, unable to answer. Months later, in a packed courtroom, Emily gave evidence. He spoke firmly, every detail he had kept. He knew he was helping to destroy the criminal network. I knew I was doing the right thing. But each word seemed to tear off pieces of itself. Michael, sitting in front of her, did not look away at any time. There was pain, but also something that felt like forgiveness. And that look would haunt her forever. When it was all over, Emily left the courtroom with faltering steps. The sun was shining, people were applauding, but inside it there was no celebration. There was only the emptiness of those who chose the truth and lost love. Back in her simple home, without luxury, without security guards, without the weight of the golden walls, Emily lay down on the bed and wept silently. She had won, but the victory had a bitter taste. For the truth, as Kareem had said, was not just a weapon. It was also a sentence. And Emily would live forever with the burden of having destroyed the man she still loved in spite of everything.